Okay, this week Sitka announced what is really the first drill hole of this season. They have an aggressive program this year. They're going to do, excuse me, 30,000 meters of drilling. And a lot of that drilling is going to be focused at the blackjack target. So they're, little refresh. They have a very large resource developing. I think they're up to 2.8 million ounces, some of which is in the Eiger deposit, and then some of which is in this blackjack deposit. And it's in the deeper part of the blackjack deposit where they started to encounter some higher grades in late 2023. They've been chasing that and very diligently drilling, to find out where this high grade goes at depth. I think there's basically a feeder zone coming up from below, the upside down cow model that I've presented. And I think this hole demonstrates that they're onto something. They really are chasing the grade, and that's what they need to do. Okay, 108 meters or 108.9 meters of 3.27. That's a tenth of an ounce gold, guys. That's crazy. I mean, that's wonderful. Now, a lot of people say, gee, that's deep. I can't tell you how many emails I get. Oh my gosh, it seems deep. Well, I got a slide here in a couple that hopefully I can put a lot of the concerns people have to rest. I'll show you why. Okay, go to the next slide. Here is the hole in plan view. So this is looking down on the blackjack deposit. There's a whole kind of cluster of holes. It's kind of like, think of it like spaghetti, stacked on top of each other. The hole that we're going to look at here in 3D is that one that's kind of dark. It's a little bit darker and more bold in color. That's the one they announced in this news release. And it does drill to the northeast. It's hit and probably crossed more or less the true width of, or the width of this gold zone, high grade feeder. It's very interesting how they're starting to see this thing take shape. I think, go to the next slide. I think they're starting to develop a vector on the grade. This is a cross-sectional view, more or less down the axis of the drill hole. So this is a northeast-oriented cross-section. We are looking to the northwest, and you can see a whole series of holes that were shallower above, but now we got holes deeper, and that's where our thesis started. Back when we first took position in Sitka a couple of years ago, was, hey, chase this big low grade thing at surface down and let's see what happens to it. And they are, okay. They're hitting good mineralization. If you look at the broader interval of mineralization, it hit a big whack of what was it, 1 point? Actually, Trevor, can you go back one slide? Because I can't remember the number. I know it was in the title. Or go back 2 slides. All right, one more. There we go. You can see, 352 meters, I believe it says, a 1.55 gram per ton gold. That's astounding. I mean, this is kind of, valley grade, or, this is analogous to the valley discovery now at this point. I think this is very important. So keep going forward there. Go next. There we go. Right there. Okay, here is the picture they're starting to see. They've got the resource, and the big colored blobs that you see there are basically the model resource at Blackjack, but they're also seeing the high grade forming a chute here. And I think they're confident this thing is projecting in a chute that's looking southeast. So in this case, our section is looking northeast, and the plunge of the high grade, they interpret the plunge to be to the southeast. Not 100% sure on that. I'm not going to be too critical because, they could be 100% right, but there's more going on here in my view, and I'm going to show you why. I'm actually going to go to the leapfrog model, and we're going to take a look at this. All right, so let's see. Window. There we go. Share. There. Can people see this now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me wait a second.
It says it's
Trevor, do you see it, Trevor? There we go. Got it.
Okay. All right. Just a little bit slow today. Okay. Look, the map that you see here is straight out of the news release. So this is the image we were looking at earlier, but I want to show you this thing in 3D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off that image, and we're going to look at the drill holes. Okay. And the one that you see in blue, which is this guy right here, that is your reported interval. Notice that that it's the lower part of this hole, this bit right here, that hosts that mineralization. Okay, and it is in amidst other drill holes in this area. It's not like it's, this area wasn't known to have gold. There's certainly known gold, but this helps them put the picture together. I think we're starting to see some continuity show up in the high grade in this area. But as I turn this around, one of the things I'm going to point out, while it would be easy to just say, oh, there's a zone of high grade developing here, look at over here. There's actually a drill hole from last year, I believe, over here that's hit high grade. How does this all tie together? There's still a little bit that needs to be sorted out. Okay, now right now I'm going to orient this. We're looking more or less northwest. Okay, so if this thing is heading down plunge to the southeast, yeah, these holes and that, yeah, they're all in high grade, but you got to ask yourself, why does this guy right here not hit high grade? It hits low grade, but didn't hit high grade. Okay, so as I turn this around, you see what I mean. Now we're looking at this thing in sectional view. And if the plunge on this thing is going in this direction, that interval right there is a little bit anomalous. Like, it doesn't support the thesis that this is going to the southeast overall. I think a little bit more study, a few more drill holes need to happen. Now, they do have a drill hole that's coming back here soon. I believe it's down in this area, something like this. So let's wait and see what they find. But the key is they are seeing pretty good continuous high grades starting to show up in this system. So that purple mass that you see there is certainly looking like a valley type discovery. A lot of work to do yet, but I think it's a major discovery personally. So very patient. I can't wait to see more assays, particularly this next hole that's announced to have a lot of visible gold in it. I think we'll see some exciting results. Okay, now I'm going to go to back to the deck here. Thank you. And go to the next slide. Now, to answer all the emails that I've gotten about how, this is deep and stuff, I actually grabbed this slide, which is off of a Cisco development. Okay, this is not part of Sitka in any way, shape, or form, but it does at least illustrate some mines in Canada. These are Canadian underground gold operations, and they happen to be bulk tonnage operations. And it shows you the grades of these things. The grades are in the neighborhood of, on the low end, Goldex, what is that, 1.7 grams? Okay, pretty low grade. Up to almost 4 grams in the case of Cisco's Caribou deposit, and all of these things are bulk underground. Okay, so the Goldex and this deposit that we're seeing take shape at Blackjack, I think, have a lot of similarities in terms of volume and perhaps even geometry. At the end of the day, Agnico's making a lot of money. Look at the all-in sustaining costs for these things. Okay, all of these deposits make good money, and they have very similar grades to what we're seeing. And look, I've talked about this with even Scott Verdal. It's like, well, what have you found? Call it a valley type discovery at depth. Could you mine it? Absolutely. In fact, if anything, it could be even more appealing in certain cases if the topography is too steep or stuff. To go underground and actually bulk mine something. I'm not saying that's the case here at Sitka, but these are good deposits and they will make good mines. All right, so that's the takeaway. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, Goliath put out a news release this week. Look, they've had a lot of research done around the Sherbet system, and this is part of the the Gold Digger project that they have up in the Golden Triangle in British Columbia. Sherbet is a very, very large gold system. As they drill more and more, they're just finding it. It keeps expanding, and they're starting to find higher grades. But last year in particular, they found a very clear, I would call it definitive evidence that the system, the gold system, is actually related to an intrusion. So a magmatic event that brought the gold up, and the gold seems to be very closely tied to that particular event. This is interesting. Okay, go to the next slide. Now, I'm not going to read through all these. This is part of the news release. I'd urge everybody that has a long time on the weekend to read through this and try to digest the dissertation that's here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and just highlight a few things. First of all, this study that was done by the Colorado School of Mines, was all encompassing. They basically reviewed all the drilling and all the data that's been generated by Goliath. So it is all encompassing, very thorough work. I know the folks that did it. High grade mineralization. Yeah, we know about the classic sherbet style veins, these very broad, thick veins that are relatively flat lying. But now we see a very, very compelling evidence that you have gold that's associated with magmatic dikes that have come up through as well, which are high angle. Okay, so now we have two targets basically. So the shear hosted zones that we know good and well, and now we have these, these stockwork zones within the dikes that are also apparently high grade and have that direct magmatic connection. Okay, yes, there are stacked veins here. We've now found a lot of different veins. They quote 12 different veins that they found. Many are very high grade. In fact, last year they started to really focus in, find that high grade core to the system, particularly around the Bonanza lode. And I think we're going to see the company focus like a laser on drilling up that high grade this year. Go to the next slide. Okay, now this gets into the world of esoteric. Okay, but anybody that's a geologist in BC knows that the deposits in the Golden Triangle typically fall within a certain range of ages. Okay, and those are back in the 100+ million year range. Okay, I'll just say they're older. Okay, well, this work that was done by these folks at School of Mines actually dated the mineralization, and what they're finding is the gold in this case at Sherbet is actually related to a much younger magmatic event. It's dated at 50.7 million years. It's what we call Eocene in age. Why is that important? Well, this is really the first definitive evidence that you have an Eocene mineralization event occurring within the Golden Triangle. It's really taken the blinders off a lot of people's eyes, and now they're thinking, wait a minute, you have this here? Maybe there's more of these. I think, it got me to thinking when I saw this data, even SK mining, the high grade that was found late last year at the south end of the property, those veins apparently are very closely tied to an intrusion down there. So I've talked to the guys that we're going to have do field work out there and collect samples. I want to see if that's an Eocene intrusion. Okay, maybe this Juggernaut thing that they've discovered, maybe that's an Eocene intrusion. There's a whole world of new thought going into this. Okay, I'm going to spare you the rest, but basically, this data says that we have a new beast in the Golden Triangle, and people may rethink how they explore even based on this work. Very good analysis. Go to the next slide. All right, Eloro put some news out here. Some more drill holes. These are infill holes, and I think they're very important. Any infill drilling they do at this stage is critical to build up a solid resource base. Now, I'm going to do something really weird for everyone. I realize we're running long. It's been a long, but I hope people can be a little patient here. I'm going to show you two models. Okay, I'm going to show you Eloro, and then I got a secret surprise. Okay, share screen. There we go. Windows. Okay, hopefully that's popped up.
Yes.
Okay, this is Eloro. This is looking down on their news release, the map from the news release, this image right here, and this red oval that they have, that is kind of their core high-grade area that they're focused on. They want to infill that and basically come up with a more advanced, confident resource that they can put into a starter pit. How much tonnage could you fit into a pit like this? I think you could probably stuff 150, maybe with luck 200 million tons in that general area. Okay, and infilling this data is critical because as they infill, it helps answer the questions of whether there is grade in between some of these widely spaced holes that were part of the original resource. The more data, the better the outcome. Okay, it's that simple. Now, the two holes that were in this news release are these blue dots that are over here. They're kind of teal blue there and there. One thing I'll show you, the scale bar that's in the lower right, as I zoom in and out, it changes. Okay, so you can freeze your frame and just check it out if you want to on YouTube, whatever. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the image real quick because that's kind of bogging things down, and we're going to look at the drill holes. You can see right away, just from color and intensity alone, there is an area right through here where the drill intercepts, look at these, are nice, solid, long drill intercepts. And many of these holes, most of these holes through this area have very, very stout silver polymetallic intercepts. And that is why they're focused on this area. Okay. This is critical to get this right, because this is where your mine is going to start. Now you might say, well, that's fine. You know, that's cool. But what about all this stuff down here? Or what about all this stuff up here? Look, I've made this argument multiple times. When you have a project like this, you want to start with a mine. If you build a mine, okay, if they were to come in here, identify 150 million tons that they can convert into reserves, that makes a great mine, we're off and running, because then you can capitalize the mine, build it, make some money, and then you worry about the rest of all this stuff. Okay, there's heaps more stuff here, over here, and over here. And yes, at some point, this whole thing will probably fall into an ultimate mine, but you got to start somewhere. Okay, and in the mining industry, we've kind of lost our way. I say they focus like a laser on this right here, get this piece into a mine. I'll show you what I mean by that. I'll just cut a quick cross section just so people can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to cut a section right down the guts of it right here. Okay, if we tilt this up on its side and we zoom out a little bit, look at the mineralization here. It's nice, solid mineralization. You don't see a lot of black gaps in the drill holes in this area. It's pretty consistent. Okay, this is going to make a decent open pit, and it's where you start. What do I mean? Okay, well, I'm going to show you something that's we'll say we're going to do Back to the Future here. We're going to look at a mine that's not far away from Eloro here that we know good and well. Okay, that's actually been mined for about 15 years now. This is San Cristobal, and we're looking down. We're looking towards the southeast here. We're looking down at the pit. All of these little white pixie sticks you see here are drill holes that were drilled at the time that the deposit was drilled out. Okay, I'm going to tilt this up very gently. It's a very big file, and you can see that there's a lot more going on below here. Okay, now we bought this about 2.5, 3 years ago now, and one of my big pushes has been for the folks here at the mine to drill. Okay, we need to find more ore. I want to have a long future to San Cristobal. Okay, so where are we starting? Well, this area right here, you can see lots of red and stuff. These are drill holes that have been completed in about the past 6 or 8 months, and we found massive extensions of the ore out into the wall of the pit. We're outside of the pit. This is the pit over here. This is way outside. We might have found years worth of ore. We might have another 6 or 8 years, maybe even more, maybe 10 years if we're lucky, of ore. And as I spin this around, you see there's actually some very high grades in here too. If I zoom in, I know this is probably making some people dizzy, but look at up here. Look at where this purple is up here. There's very high grades just outside of the pit. Okay, this is how ore bodies work. Okay, this is now 15 or 16 years into the mining of this pit, and we're still finding ore. Okay, so this is kind of analogous to the stuff that would be outside of the starter pit that Eloro has. You know, you develop mines gradually over time. You drill, find more, until you just can't do it anymore. Okay, and that's what we're doing here. This is a delightful outcome for us. We've already found multiple years worth more ore. You can see even right below the pit here, we found some. As I scroll along, by the way, we're looking northwest. Even in here, which is interesting, you can see there's a bunch of high grade tucked right there underneath the pit. Yeah, are we going to get that out? Heck yeah. Okay, this is ore. This is low hanging fruit for us. I could spend all day showing you this. There's a pretty good high grade zone tucked in right there. Look at that. Look at, holy guacamole. You know, very high grade stuff right in front of God and everybody. Okay, we have a lot of low-hanging fruit. We're going to drill the bejeebers out of this place. I'm known for kind of pushing drilling in excess. Look at this, guys. Holy guacamole. This is an old portion of the pit that was abandoned 15 years ago. Okay, and look at all the high grade underneath there. Just an absolute ocean of high grade intercepts. Are we going to find more ore? Heck yeah. Okay, we got a multi-year future. But the point I'm trying to make is Eloro needs to build a pit on what they have in front of them and worry about the rest of that stuff. It's a tomorrow problem. Okay, get off. Get focus like a laser. Get the infill drilling done. Put a PFS together, then a BFS, whatever. Get this thing capitalized and get it into production. That's how you create value. All right. Okay, now we're going to go back to this slide deck here. Go for it. I know I'm going long. This is a tough week. Look, real quick note. Snowline has expanded their leadership team. Look, I'm having trouble because for some reason this image today, like my little screen, I think it's because I'm on my PC today. I can barely read anything, guys. It's so bloody tiny. But basically, they've expanded their operational team. They now have a VP of engineering. Is this a company that's just going to sit in the sidelines and wait for somebody to acquire them? No, they're taking all the right steps. They are going to work towards developing the Valley deposit. I think these kind of moves are always a good sign to see in a company that has a massive world-class discovery, and I'm glad to see them make this move. All right, go to the next slide. Alameira had some news a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and it's about the expansion at Cajueiro. They keep finding more stuff, okay? And really this is turning into, I call it a Brazilian version of Sitka or something like that. Like it's basically an upside down cow, the cow udder model in Brazil. All right, now let's go to the next slide. Now, what do I mean? Look at all these gold targets they have now. Yes, we know about the historic work, in that white area, the Cajueiro mineral resource area. I think it's about 700,000 ounces inside that white box. But now we know there's a gold system at Maria Bonita. But look at all of these different gold systems they now have. They have a whole slew of these things scattered across their property. Okay, each and every one of these is going to add, maybe a few 100,000. I don't know, maybe 500,000 ounces here and there. Like you're going to see all of these things come together. It's the upside down cow, okay? And each one of these is going to be a significant deposit, in my view. They've got to get out and start drilling. Okay, they've got the soil data and other data coming back. Great stuff. Go to the next slide. They found rock in outcrop. This is a beautiful sample of Solicified Breach. Why do I put it in here? Because it's a cool looking rock, and it has gold in it. Okay, it's basically telling us that there is a giant porphyry gold system here. They need to get drilled. Okay, this has got to be the year of drilling for Alameira. They got to get back in the saddle and drill. I think this is. I've seen other stories get financed recently, and I'm thinking, my gosh, Alameira is head and shoulders above a lot of them. Okay, these guys need to just pull the Band-Aid off. Go. Let's go to the next slide. Onyx. Look, we put money into Onyx way back when they first founded. I think 2 or 3 years ago. They have a project in the Yukon. I knew they had the one back in Ontario too, this Monroe Croesus deposit. But, much of their focus, I should say, has been on the Yukon. Now, they did decide to drill back at Monroe Croesus here recently. And lo and behold, they actually snagged a pretty good interval, 3.4 grams over 70 meters, more or less, with a high grade interval. In fact, some of this is actually pretty high grade. There's 3 meters in that are north of an ounce per ton. Now, what is this? Let's go to the next slide. Look, this is, firstly, it's in the Timmins camp. Okay, so this map shows you where we're located. This is part of the Timmins goldfield, okay, which is important because if you think about it in that context, you can't swing a cat around here without finding a 1 million+ ounce deposit. Now, do I know how big this is going to be? Look, I know what the company's presented investors with, and it looks interesting. I'm not going to say I have a definitive, view on where this is headed, but this for a first stage drill hole, this is pretty darn interesting. Okay, go to the next slide. Here's a plan view. The drill hole that is in the one to highlight is the one that goes to that yellow zone. They actually hit the gold up in the northern part of this property in an area where there's been no drilling. So you can see what they've hit is wide open. It's open along strike, which would be east to west. It's also open north and south. It's basically open in all directions. Yes, there's been drilling here in the past and it's hit some decent mineralization, but this is a brand new discovery. Let's look at it in section. Go to the next slide. Okay, you can see in cross-sectional view, there we go. They were drilling these holes across the known gold zones. That Argus zone, the brown linear things, were the known target. But in this case, they happened to let this hole go a bit longer. You can see it extends a bit further than other holes that were drilled in this area. And lo and behold, they've hit this Argus North discovery. And, this is how discoveries are made. That's a beautiful discovery. What is it? Don't know yet. Okay. The core photos that I saw, interesting stuff. It looks very classical Timmins type stuff. It's an orogenic gold system. But I'd love to learn more about this. Maybe I'll talk to the company here soon, find out if maybe there's some link with magma that's associated with this too. I say that because some of the photos I saw kind of look like the Preston Porphyry over at the big open pit at Timmins in the Porcupine Camp. Look, this is areas heating up again. What was it? Discovery Silver now should be named Discovery Gold. But the Porcupine operation from Newmont and Timmins is getting back in gear here. The future of gold in the Timmins belt, I think, is really good. I think this is an opportune time for a discovery like this. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, this kind of reflects on my first slide that we got a lot to look forward to this year. Like, we have a lot of companies that will be active drilling and doing other work in the field over the season. One of the more exciting ones, I think, is Juggernaut. I know some people say, well, lightning can't strike twice, and but look, I think one of the things you got to reflect on is that some of the guys who work here at Juggernaut are some of the same geologists that basically found and have now advanced sherbet at Goliath, over the past years. So they have a very different way of thinking about exploration in the Golden Triangle than most other geologists. And they've gone out and they've identified what could be another sherbet type target here. And the size of these veins is absolutely jaw-dropping. I mean, look at that. That's 4 meter width. There's a guy standing there, a geologist, 6-foot geologist standing right there. It gives you a sense of scale. These are absolutely immense veins. And look at the grades. Very much, very, very similar to what we've seen out of sherbet. Could this be another sherbet type? Could it be tied to an Eocene intrusion? Well, I saw some samples at PDAC. They were kind of saying, "Oh, maybe there's a porphyry." I'm like, "No, that looks like the intrusion at sherbet." I'm seeing a connection like that. Maybe a reduced intrusive gold system with these associated lodes. Wouldn't that be a cool outcome? Lightning might strike twice. Quite frankly, the flavor of mineralization being gold with some silver and a little bit of base metal, copper, lead, zinc, very, very similar to sherbet. Okay, go to the next slide. Here's another vein. What is this? This is 8 meters thick. Look at that. Look at the geologist in there. That's crazy. 16-gram gold equivalent. What's more to say? I mean, that's incredible. If you found veins like this, they don't just go, oh, we'll go a few meters and stop. Veins like that, those are big boys. They tend to go a long way, both laterally and vertically. My hunch is these guys are onto something pretty special. And when I talked to Lele at PDAC, he was equally as fired up about this as he's ever been about sherbet. So say no more. Let's go to the next slide. And look, they've got their government approvals and they're ready to go to drill the porphyry targets at their Valiente project. Now, this is not Provisto that they're going to drill. This is Bellin, the Bellin prospect, where we have multiple porphyry centers. These are porphyry copper gold centers. First time this has ever been drilled. This is true greenfield level discovery. And they've got their permit. Now, firstly, great. It sounds like you're going to start drilling. That's exciting. But it also means that getting a permit for Provista, which is not far away, should also be manageable. We now know that the company has ability to get permits. I think it's very important. Go to the next slide. So another story to look forward to, guys. I'm trying to tell the world spring is sprung and the drills are going to start flying. And yep, here we go. Okay, tectonic. This is actually the news release from a few weeks ago about the drill hole they have in the Alpha Bowl area. Yes, tectonic needs to get their proverbial poo in a pile and get going. I want to see the company drill their living butt off this summer. I don't want to see them start late. I want to see them start as soon as humanly possible and get back out to Valley and drill some holes. Excuse me, I said Valley. Whoops, Freudian slip. Get back to Alpha Bowl and drill some holes. Now, why? Okay, I'm going to jump off and I'm going to show you the screen share again because we got to go through a refresh on this puppy. All right, we got to show everybody why we're excited about. There, come on, share you darn thing. Okay, let's go over here. Where is it? Okay, there's tectonic. There we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, look, this imagery comes out of that news release that was about a month and a half ago or two. And I'm not going to beat this up. What I want to show you is most of the drilling to date has been down here around Chicken Mountain, right? There's gold in every hole. And yes, there's probably going to be a big resource here. Generally lower grade. I'd love to see them find high grade. Okay, and I've said that from day one. And I think they have it at Alpha Bowl. So what I'm going to do is turn the surface stuff off here. Whoops, I got to turn 2 layers off. Hold on. There we go. We're going to focus not down here at Chicken Mountain. We're going to focus right in here where there's just a handful of drill holes. In particular, we're going to focus on, oops, this bad boy right here. Okay, there you go. That's our drill hole right there. This is our 65-meter hole that ended in mineralization, okay? Did not stop. This hole over here, oops, sorry. This is the one. Sorry. This one ended in mineralization too. But this is the higher grade one. Okay, this guy right here. Do you see any other drill holes around here? No. You know, these two are kind of way out. They actually have gold in them. Okay, so it's not like these are barren. But right there, you got a high grade intercept and absolutely nothing else around it out here. Now, what do we know about this area? Look, we know that the placer, see this pink blob here? There was a humongous placer deposit in here. Hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold came out of this drainage right here in Alpha Bowl. We now have an explanation of why all this gold was in this placer. It's because the deposit's probably sitting right underneath here. Okay, so a systematic drill out of this area with a few deep holes could produce a valley. Why do I say that? Let's look at scale. I'm going to turn it. So now we're looking east, kind of. Okay, look at the scale bar down here. Okay, right now that scale bar, about 750 meters, that's about the size of the length of the valley deposit. Okay, we need to drill the bejeebers out of this place and drill it deep too. I want to see like 300, 400 meter holes, and let's see if we can find the next valley in this area. We know there's a ton of gold coming out of here. We have a hole right there that's jagged 65 meters or 1 point whatever gram, like 1.3, 2 or 3 gram, I think it is. It has to be done. Make it so, please. Okay. All right, let's go back to the slide deck. Go to the next slide. There we go. Intrepid has announced they have received permits so they can expand their exploration activities at Corral Copper. What do I want these guys to do? Look, they drilled a lot of holes about a year ago, and they had great results. And they were not too surprising results because there had been drilling in that area before. Okay, now what I want to see is them apply all of the technical work that was done by people that I know work for them and have done a good job on the technical side to develop new targets. And I want to see these guys take some bold steps and try to find the big prize here. What they have to date, great results, very high grade, good copper, good gold. Let's find the rest of this thing. That system that they have is not a one-off, okay? Mother Nature does not do that at random. There's something bigger going on here. I've talked before about how this is analogous to another mining district in Arizona. And it's basically an IOCD system. It's not a porphyry, which is interesting. Bisbee. And I think that this one has that kind of flavor. Okay. And I want to see these guys find the big prize. All right. Go to the next slide. by the way, without saying, most of these companies have money. That's the whole punchline here. These companies are going to be rocking and rolling this year. Okay, now Puma took a different strategy. They actually have teamed up with Kinross. They have a $2 million program that's going to initiate here shortly. And it sounds like Kinross wants to go out and open up a lot more trenches over the Williamsbrook area and see if they can't find more discoveries like the Lynx discovery. Basically, just rip the place apart and see what's going on. Yes, they got many teams going out in the field. They're going to do a lot of mapping, sampling, trenching, things like this. But maybe later this year, once they find some more discovery, they can start drilling again. And we'll see some drill holes, both at Lynx, but also new discoveries that they might make. The nice thing is the company doesn't have to raise money to do this exploration. Kinross is putting it in as part of an earn-in. All right, let's go to the next thing. Yukon Metals. Look, they've had 2 news releases just in the past month or so about drilling. One was at Star River. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. This announcement, which came out recently, is about the Birch property. And this is over in the western Yukon. Very large copper anomaly. Copper, and there's some gold as well. In fact, high grade. I talked to Ron Burdall. Ron's the dad. Scott's the son, and Ron's his father. And this collection of projects was from the family's portfolio of projects. These are basically the base metal version of the Snowline assets. All right, and this one, he really likes the target. I think it's a robust target. Do I know exactly what it is at this stage? No, not really. It's perhaps a skarn system that's associated with maybe a copper gold porphyry. Don't know, but big anomaly. They're going to do some field work and get in there and start drilling. So this is going to be a company that does a lot of drilling this year. They have the money. I'd love to see them succeed. Maybe they'll find a base metal gold version of a Snowline.